Hey everybody, and welcome to Infinite Leaders Live. I'm Lewis Keynes. Our why is all about being better. We want to support infinite learning and for everybody involved in education, regardless of their role, to be willing to listen, learn, and share in order for us to all be better educators and better humans. I'm joined today, as usual, by my colleague and friend, Alan Dunstan.
Thanks, Lewis. Really looking forward to diving deeper into understanding how leaders with an infinite mindset translate this across to their teams. We want to focus on the things you don't get taught at university or any courses. We want real life lessons from real life people with real life experience.
We're learning as we go through this. This isn't our day job, and we're also recording live, so there are bound to be a few mistakes, as I'm sure you've seen in previous episodes. But as ever, we would love your feedback. Please get in touch via Twitter on anything that you think that we could improve, and we've had some brilliant suggestions so far from people, and also on the things that you think that we've been doing well. We do really appreciate the time you've taken to feedback to us. Alan, let's crack on. Can you introduce today's guest?
Today's guest is my wonderful wife, Rebekah Russell. She is the head of senior school at British School Manila. She's worked her way up from being a physics teacher to head of department, assistant head, deputy head, and has worked in a number of countries, including the Philippines, Qatar, Spain, and the UK. And she has a great journey to share. So get your pens and paper ready. No doubt there'll be some absolute gems of wisdom along the way today.
Bex, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm good. Back in the UK now, so I'm feeling great. Being in this fresh air is making a world of difference. Thank you both of you for having me on this. Appreciate that.
How's COVID-19 affecting you? And you're very welcome, by the way.
You know what? I think everybody's got a story to tell, their COVID journey, haven't they? But as a head teacher, it's been hugely challenging. Leaving the site, leaving the students, leaving the staff. I guess along the way, I've realised how much I need social connection, but not in this way. This doesn't work for me as much as actually being physically in the building, physically with people and around people. So the challenge has been very real for me in that respect. As a mum, it's been hugely challenging, and I'm sure this resonates with most parents out there that trying to distance learn whilst trying to do a job, whilst trying to be a wife, whilst trying to look after a house is it's had its moments. But so 6 weeks in Manila, and I think I'm on my 6th week in the UK. But now Alan's here, we're united as a family again, which is great.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's nice to have us all back together again. It's interesting you talk about a COVID journey. Let's just take it back to your younger days and just briefly, how have you got to being a senior leader like you are, and some of the challenges you've had along the way?
Yeah, it's been an unconventional journey for me. I think if we go right back to when I was a lot younger, I actually grew up in a place called Ware in Hertfordshire, and started my secondary experience there. And within about 6 months of being in year 7, my mum and dad moved me and my brother and sister up to Yorkshire, which was a bit of a culture shock in itself. And I started a comprehensive school up here, and very, very different to my previous school. So I kind of went from being someone that had a really good work ethic to someone that was suddenly had a very funny accent compared to most people that I was now immersed into this school. And it was survival for me. I can just remember walking in and thinking, oh my God, this is so alien to me. And so I went through school and I found the whole experience very, very negative. I didn't particularly enjoy school. There was maybe 1, maybe 2 teachers that I really felt cared for me, were a little bit bothered about me. But other than that, it was dog eat dog. And I just tried to get through that. I had some great friends. We had a good laugh. But in terms of getting anything academic, anything holistic from my experience of school, I didn't get that. So I left school. I got a job. I enjoyed, I was a physical therapist. I really enjoyed that for a time, and then got bored. Went back to college. Wanted to be a paramedic actually at the time. I'd gone from wanting to be a Hollywood movie star to being a paramedic to join. I'd gone all over the place. And And then I got to college and I had a chemistry teacher. Can't actually remember his name, but I do remember that he looked like Mr. Bean. And he was an absolute inspiration to me. I can remember sitting in the old-fashioned labs and thinking, wow, if I'd have had a teacher like this, I'd have just loved school. I'd have loved science. And I would be in a very different place to where I am right now, which was in my late teens. Sat back at school, basically, retaking a few things. And then I guess forward winding from there, really, my journey changed a lot, because I went from not wanting to be a paramedic. I don't really know where that came from, in a way, because I genuinely feel that my calling was to be a teacher and to give the kids an experience that I didn't have at school, and give them that guidance and support and care that I certainly didn't feel when I was at school. And so it took a different direction for me. So I went into science, a bit of a strategic move, because I was a bit older and I wanted a job. I needed a job, and I knew that female scientists were scarce. So I knew that I'd always get a job, and lo and behold, I always got a job. Went onto the international circuit, as you've already said, Alan, from Spain to Qatar, and then on to the Philippines. And just kind of worked my way into different roles, really. And I know that people say that they're promotions, but for me, I wasn't really a glory seeker. I'm not ambitious like that. But when I see jobs that I think, oh, I quite fancy that I think I'll be able to add value to that, then that's how I've ended up where I'm at now, with a challenge where I can really feel that I can make a difference in people's lives.
So you touched upon there, you had a really negative experience yourself at school, and you feel now that that's a calling. That's quite a jump from having a negative experience of something that you really disliked and you really didn't want to be a part of, to then working out and realizing that this is something that you really want to do and you want to pursue. So other than the one chemistry teacher that really inspired you, what changed your direction on that? How did you get to that place where suddenly you thought the school is where you want to be and where you should be?
You know what, when we're at school, it's so difficult to try and find your way, isn't it? And try and know who you are as a person. And I'd looking back now, I recognize that the transition of moving from down south, up north, moving schools, changing friendship groups, all of those things were massive in my life, and they weren't recognized. And I think had they have been, I think I'd have been in a very different place going through school. And so those negative experiences that I had, I think they shaped the way that I now approach things. And I felt like I was just surviving every day, and I didn't really have a good sense of who I was and what I wanted. I felt like I needed to fit in. And the person that walked into the school on that Monday morning was not going to fit in. And I suppose moving forward from that into college and going back into that, I was suddenly exposed to all these different people with different life stories from different backgrounds. And I suddenly realized that actually it's okay just to be who you are. And had I have had someone that had just told me that at school, that it was okay just to be authentic, just to be yourself, then I think I might have had a bit more of a sense of belonging. Self-acceptance, I'm not really sure whether we all fully accept ourselves ever, but I didn't even know that these phrases existed at school. And where I am now, I just don't want to see kids having experiences like that. I think that there's so much more that you can get from school, from the school experience. And for me, I needed to go through that in order to get to a place where I really felt like I could be that person that made a difference in a school. Naively went in thinking that I could save the world, of course. And then was the reality of that kicked in, and actually you can't save all of them, but you can save some of them, and you can guide some of them, and you can show them that you care, and you hope at the end of their journey they look back and see that.
It's really interesting to talk about that fitting in and that survival, because I think we've probably all had similar experiences that when you grow up in council estates up in Yorkshire. Could you just tell us a little bit more about what your guiding principles are and how they then have helped shape your career moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, for me, working hard has always been a really a big thing for me since I left school, not whilst I was at school, but since I left school. I always felt that I needed to prove myself in a way and earn my stripes. And the way that I did that was to work really hard. And I think that that's a great character trait for anybody to have, just to put a bit of graft in. You know, if you see people stacking those chairs after assembly, go help them stack the chairs, leading by example and being authentic. You know, we talked a little bit about this earlier, and just being yourself, because it's so hard to be anybody else. And actually the qualities and the strengths that you've got that lie within are actually worthwhile. They're worthwhile sharing with others. And I think that shapes who you are. So for me, kindness, I don't know whether anybody listening has ever done the VIA strengths survey, but sometimes I thought that kindness was a bit of a weakness in me, actually. But actually, the more I think about it, do you know what? That's a pretty decent strength to have. And I came out at number 1 on that, so I was pretty happy about that. So my guiding principles would be just to be kind, to be authentic, and work hard, and dotted into that, have a little bit of humour, because your days aren't always good. Sometimes as a leader, they're really tough. They're really tough days, and you can't share that with many people. And the higher up the ladder you get, the more lonely it becomes. And so to pepper in a little bit of degrimming, a little bit of humour helps along the way, no end. And then my overarching principle, which I guess umbrellas everything, is just to be student-centred above everything else. Is that every child matters. I know that was a mantra from many, many years ago from the UK government, but it absolutely is true. Every child matters.
Unpick that for us a bit, Bex. What does that mean?
Every child matters.
Yeah, what does that mean to you? How does that look in what you do as a day-to-day role, in your role as a teacher?
It's interesting because when you talk to kids about their favourite teachers or their experiences at school, they don't remember lessons. They remember how people made them feel, and that people actually cared about their journey. And the issues that you have as a student quite often are very insignificant to us as adults, because we know how to self-regulate. You know, neurologically, our brain is fully developed and we know how to respond to things. But when you're a year 7, 8 or 9 kid, and you know, you've got friendship problems and things aren't working out at home with your parents, and these are real problems to kids. And just to have that trusted adult, I think, makes a huge difference, that they're heard and that their feelings are validated. And whilst academics are hugely important, I understand that. You know, I've got 2 kids and I want them to do well. I want them to pass their exams, but I want kids to be content. Not happy, because I think there's a difference. You can't be happy all the time. That's not life. But to be content with where they are in the moment, and know that there's people around them that genuinely care about them, that will listen to them. I think it's hugely important that schools offer a holistic education, not just on paper, but they've actually got those systems in place that lay behind the scenes, that pastoral network of care, where you're upskilling kids. You're not providing a crutch, but you're giving them skills and coping strategies to be able to face whatever challenges are thrown at them.
Yeah, I just picking that apart is how do you then translate those guiding principles and those ideas of being student-centered and caring? How do you get that across to your staff?
I think number one thing is you got to create that culture in your school, and having a shared vision and having a real clear clarity on your mission. How are you going to get there? What's going to take you to that place? And I think without having people on board and having that shared vision, I don't think it's possible to do that. What I will say is that the school that I work in at the moment, there is a shared understanding, and you can tell. And I think if you're a real true educator and you went into education for the right reasons, it's something that may have been lost along the way, but actually it's there. Like, you care about kids. That's why you went into the profession that you're in. And frankly, if it's not why you went into it, you probably shouldn't be doing it. You probably should go and find your calling somewhere else. And so setting that culture from day one, leading by example, letting people know that actually these are the priorities in our school. This is what matters. I know that we talk about a lot about living what we say, and a lot of that is role modeling to the staff, to the students, that actually, you're not just preaching, but you're living this, you're practicing this yourself, and you're taking care of yourself, and you're sharing that vision with your staff.
That role modeling part of it that you just touched upon, I'm going to praise you a lot for a few seconds, because in terms of being a people person and caring and being there to support and help people, you're absolutely fantastic at that, and being somebody who works with you quite closely, that's something that you feel. How do you do that and do everything else that you do in terms of responsibilities and roles that you have, but still find that time to give people your time and to give people your thoughtful analysis on things and to give people your support?
Well, thank you for that. That's nice to hear. 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, when I became a deputy head, I remember sitting in Simon Mann's office, and again I did it when I got the head of senior role as well, and just having this overwhelming fear of imposter syndrome, and thinking, I'm not really quite sure how this has happened, and why am I here? I don't have the skills for this. I don't have the qualifications for this. And it all became very overwhelming. And Simon said to me, just be yourself. Just be authentic. Draw on the things that you're good at. What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? I enjoy being around people. I enjoy chatting. Use your skills and connect with people by doing what you do. And I kind of, for some people that might seem very, very simple, but for someone that has come through life and not been a high achiever, actually, potentially I could have been, but I chose not to be. That was a choice that I made when I went through school. And always feeling that I had to prove myself or to fit into a mold that would be accepted by others. That was really powerful to hear that from him. And actually, who I am, that's it. That's all I've got to give. And I think that when of course you change and you evolve and you get better as a person, but those initial strengths that you've got and those characteristics help. They help people to see that, whilst you are a leader and you're trying your best to do that, actually you can connect with them in a really human way. And I think that showing that vulnerability and saying, you know what, I don't know, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to share your struggles with you, and I'm going to take you for a coffee and we're going to talk this through. Let's see where we can go with this. I think that counts for a lot. And investing time in people is never, ever wasted time, in my opinion. Other things can wait. But if you've got people that you're surrounded by that know that at a drop of a hat they can call on you, that you'll be there, that you'll listen, that you've got a sense of empathy and understanding, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And I can do that. Something I can do.
Can I just ask you on how you then deal with negative people who don't necessarily share your values, who don't want to be brought along on your journey, and what do you do with those teachers or adults that you encounter in your life?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, and I think that stems back to years ago, having this dream of being able to save everybody and to bring everybody on board. But actually, some people you just can't bring on board, and I think that's an acceptance that you have to have as a person, not as a leader, just as a person. And everybody needs to take responsibility for where they are in their life right now. I do find it difficult because I tend towards optimism. So I try and do that the best that I can. And at times when I'm surrounded by negativity, that has a personal effect on me as well. And I found that tough. But equally, because I'm so passionate about what I believe in, I'm quite happy is probably not the right word, willing. I'm very willing to have those difficult conversations and sit down with people. But I'd hope that I've got credit in the bank to be able to have those candid and straightforward, direct conversations with people in the staff. And ultimately, you know what, if people don't share your vision, that must be quite an unhappy place for them to be as well. And maybe they need to be introspective and have a little think about where they are, and is it the right place for them and their careers and them as people also.
How do you balance that out, Bex? You talked to them about, you have people that sap the energy out of you a little bit. You refer to those negative people. How do you retain that equilibrium? How do you get that back after you've had one of those conversations or one of those days that really is a struggle?
But I wrote something down actually that I wanted to share with you guys, and I didn't know whether I'd get the opportunity, but I think I have. As well as Simon Mann, when I got my job as a head of senior, my dad sent me something, and I'll read it to you because this is what gets me through. Surround yourself with the dreamers and the doers, the believers and the thinkers, but most of all, surround yourself with those who see greatness within you, even when you don't see it for yourself. And for me, I need to make sure that I have a network of people around me that love me, that appreciate me, warts and all. And that's how I get through it. Life is not about positive times all the time. That's just not, you're not going to be happy all the time. So I surround myself with people like you guys. Sometimes Alan drives me nuts, but ultimately these are spaces that are safe for me to be able to let them steam off. And so if I have a bad meeting somewhere over here, I go over here and I have a coffee with someone that I know that's going to lift my spirits and put things in perspective. And the second thing that I do is it's the way that I look at things, I think, in terms of those down days, those days that are pretty difficult and challenging, is that every conversation is a bit of inset for me. It's a training ground. And I know that every conversation that I have is going to make me better at having those conversations later down the road, or seeing their perspective. Because, life is challenging for all sorts of reasons, for all sorts of, we don't know what their stories are at the other side. And taking time to listen to that, I think it pays dividends. But negativity is never a good place to be. So you've got to have that pivot that just that sways that for you and gets you back on track.
I love that idea that every conversation's a learning opportunity. I think that's brilliant. Love that.
Yeah, I'd like to just learn a little bit more there. I mean, we'll probably have listeners that are very interested in how you deal with difficult conversations or protected conversations, whatever we want to call them. How do you approach those? And what, any tips out there for the guys that are really trying to learn how to deal with those situations?
I suppose when I think about difficult conversations, I think that they should always be difficult. I don't think that leaders that go into conversations looking forward to those sorts of things, or maybe even enjoying them, I don't think that's probably the right way to see those things. But acknowledging that this is a difficult conversation to have, acknowledging that person that sits in front of you has got to receive that message. And I think that you can always give hard-hitting messages, even if it's worst case scenario, with kindness. I genuinely think that, and I think that you can give the most difficult conversations with a little bit of discernment behind that, and empathy for the situation that you're in. Even with child protection issues, some of the worst case scenarios, the worst meetings I've ever sat in, where I've had to have very difficult conversations with people. You do it with a bit of a heart. You've got to have those conversations, but they're people at the end of the day. And maybe it's down to personality as well. But for me, I don't want to go in and have confrontation with people. That's not my way. I want to go in and I want to have a conversation, an open conversation, honest conversation. Sometimes I get criticised for the amount of time I spend in meetings. And one particular colleague, who will know who she is if she listens to this, used to say, "Oh, come on, 20 minutes in and out." And I would say, no, we dedicate an hour to this because it's actually worth listening to people. And so I guess if you're asking me for tips, I'm going around the houses here really, it's just to acknowledge that these are people, these are human beings. And sometimes people make mistakes and they need to acknowledge that and see that. Sometimes you're having difficult conversations and people are losing their jobs at the end of it. that's also tough, regardless of what lies behind those stories. That's tough. But doing it with kindness and with empathy helps.
You mentioned earlier vulnerability, a word we've talked about at length. Can you give us some idea of what role that plays in leadership, and certainly maybe show some vulnerability and share with us something where you've learned something through failure or through maybe a bit of a mess up?
Yeah. Vulnerability is such an interesting word, isn't it? And I know that we've had many a debate about this, because it's seen as almost a negative word. And when you describe vulnerable, you're talking about vulnerable children or vulnerable staff. And actually, vulnerability is so much more than that. As you taught me, really, actually, Lewis, in terms of just opening yourself up to acknowledging that it's okay to have those weaknesses. And it's also not just that, but taking it a step further and sharing those vulnerabilities with other people in that safe space, I think is just hugely powerful. And it breaks down so many barriers between you and staff, because whatever people say, it's always us and them. And again, that was one of the myths that I went into. That's not going to be how it's going to be for me. It's not going to be SLT and staff. I'm going to try and break that down. That's just not true. And I think showing staff that you don't have the answers all of the time, and that's just okay. That's okay, because someone next door, the people that you built your network with, they have the answers. You've got people that you can call on that have got those answers. I think it's hugely powerful as a human being, not just as a leader.
So go a step further for us, Bex. Give us an example of something that you maybe learned the hard way.
Oh, do you know what? I learn things the hard way all the time. And you touched on failure earlier. I can't pinpoint huge disasters in my life. Well, certainly not ones that I'm going to share with you, but that not huge, huge failures that have been eureka moments for me. It actually, I have these little failures all of the time, every day. I think maybe shouldn't have done that. Oh, maybe should have thought about that a little bit more. Next time I'll do this. And I have those regularly. And I think the vulnerabilities for me are imposter syndrome. That's a real vulnerability for me. I feel that I've just got to earn my stripes all the time. And I think that's where my values lie in terms of hard work. And not really knowing, not feeling sometimes that I just can't do this. I can't do this. I'm walking into a conference room. I can't do this. What is this? This is crazy. Why am I here? And then taking a step back and taking a breath and thinking, you know what? You worked hard for this. You've done it before. Go out there. You slip up on a sentence. It's okay. It's fine. You can do it. You can do this. And I don't know whether that's because I'm a woman, and that's quite difficult to be in a male-dominated business, really, where you are the minority. I don't know whether it comes from that or whether it's deeper rooted than that, and it goes way back to kind of childhood and the experiences I had there. But not sure. But vulnerable all the time. That's okay. I've accepted it.
What advice there, so you go back to your childhood, what advice would you give to your younger self, and what would maybe if you've done differently or you've had any regrets, how would you approach that again as a younger Rebekah?
You know what, and it gets even worse, that question, when you have your own kids, right? And you think, all those things that I wish I'd have done or not done when I was a teenager. Number one would have been, Rebekah, you're not as fat as you think you are. That would have been the first thing, because that was a huge hang up for me. I was tall, and I used to get picked for that blooming M squad on cross country every week. I hated it. And, just because I was tall and I had long legs, and oh God, I hated it. But, just be kinder to yourself, and just know that enough is sometimes okay. That's okay.
Would that still be relevant advice? You touched upon earlier, and I thought it was a really a decent observation to go back to, that females in leadership positions in school you feel are a huge minority. What advice would you extend to females that are considering, really trying to push on in their careers and that do want to go into positions of leadership?
Yeah, I read this thing not long ago. I can't remember who it was from now, but it said, if there's not a table at the chair for you, bring your own chair. Just bring that fold-up chair and stick it at the table. And I'd say to any woman out there, dig deep, because it is different. It's very different being a female leader than it is to being a male leader. And I think what comes with that is, especially if you've got a family, is the guilt that comes with being a female leader is unbelievable. And I thought it was just me until I started networking with female leaders. And actually it's something that resonates between all of us. And if you want to pursue stuff, because you can make it work. And people, something that's kind of I've picked up along the years really is that people have this work-life balance. That doesn't really work for me, because I think that I'm lucky enough to have a job that is part of my life. It's not something that I pigeonhole. And actually I see work as life, and I see life as work, and everything intermingles for me. And I think that change in that perspective for me really changed the way that I looked on that guilt as a mum, as a leader, because actually you can be both, and you can do both pretty well if you put your mind to it. And having a job that you love, we're lucky enough to be in that position. Many people aren't, but we are. And so to pigeonhole work, and now I'm going to be a different person because I'm at home, that doesn't wash me. It doesn't work with me. It would bring too much guilt with it. Instead, I think, you know what? I love what I do. And yeah, I'll check a few emails in the evening, but I'll still take the kids and I'll read to them as well. And we'll still have dinner together. There's some non-negotiables there for me. So women out there, if you're wanting to pursue leadership, you just go for it. Go for it. Find someone, surround yourself with people that are going to help you get there and support you and encourage you.
Brilliant message.
That project you did at BSM, Rebekah, where you had women as leaders, do you want to just explain a little bit more on that? Because that was really powerful for women at our school, and I think there'd be people out there really interested in that.
Well, it was actually it was spearheaded by an ERCOS conference that I went to in Bangkok or KL, and me and a colleague, Anna, we rocked up to this seminar and we thought, oh, it's run by women. Oh God, okay, let's see what it's like. And we went in, and it was just inspirational, life-changing. What these women were saying was just, it was like looking in a mirror and hearing all these women saying the same things. And I thought, you know what? Women need to create a sisterhood. And quite often we're portrayed as being the opposite, and that we're competitive, and that we gossip, and that we stand in the corridors and, we're backstabbing. It's just simply not true. Not certainly not true for people, but don't get me wrong, I do like a little bit of a gossip. But just creating that network for women to be open and candid with each other was hugely important. And I hadn't realized that until I'd walked into this workshop. So I took it back to BSM, and Anna and I rolled out a program. Only one a term. It was only 3, one a term, just to really focus on us, just as women, not as anything else, no other role that we played, but just as women. And it really opened up a network of people that you wouldn't usually speak to. And actually, all of a sudden, you were surrounded by women that had got your back, women that were experiencing the same sort of things, women that you could walk into their room and say, you know what, I was up all night with the kids, man. And they were saying, it's okay, I'll cover that lesson for you. You were suddenly empowering women to be more than they thought that they could be. And I think that that's hugely important in the context of education and in the context of women being in leadership, but also just being you. Just being a woman, and a lot of baggage comes with that at times, and just stripping that all away and saying, let's just look at you. Where's your network coming? Where are your strengths? What do you enjoy doing? who are the people in school that are your go-to people, and fill in those gaps, because quite often you have the same people that you go to, and that's unhealthy too, because you're putting so much pressure on those people to be everything to you, whereas actually maybe you need another couple of other people to fill those gaps so that the role is shared. So I really enjoyed that. That would be something, if I was staying on, I would open back up again, and I'd get that running again. It was hugely important and empowering for me as well. Found out a lot about myself in those sessions. So
tell us where you're going next then, Bex.
So we are professionally, physically, personally.
We're
heading off to Riyadh. So hoping that we get there in August sometime. So we've been at BSM now for 8 years. It's the school where professionally and personally I have grown exponentially, like enormously, and I have a lot to be grateful for in terms of what BSM allowed me to do and gave me the autonomy to do. So we move on to Riyadh. I'm taking a sideward step. I'm going into to be deputy head, something that I really fancied. I really feel that I can add something and contribute to the culture there. Obviously Alan's coming along, and so are the kids, and maybe the dogs. So a new adventure for us, and one that's ended quite badly for us in a way, and trying to put a positive spin on having very little closure to our 8-year experience after COVID is going to be something that I think later on down the road we'll have to process as a family, because it's pretty tough for us.
Yeah. We've got 3 quick fire questions to finish with.
Okay.
First one, what book are you reading at the minute? Is it any good?
Yeah, I am reading. I normally read all the ones that Alan recommends, because he reads them all and says, no, it's not worth it, so I don't bother. So this one was one that he recommended, which is Rebel Ideas. Is that Matthew Said? I think it is. Yeah. So really, really learning loads from that book about the power of and the importance of diversity in your team. Not surrounding yourself with yes people, but actually having different people in your team to add different perspectives. Which is why if you're a woman, you need to pull up that chair around that boardroom table. Important for diversity. Great book.
Yeah, it's one for my list. Big things there on echo chambers and particularly in the current situation at the moment, getting all the different opinions as to how we move forward after COVID-19 is super important. Having spent 8 years at BSM, does leaving a legacy matter to you?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. What would be the point? What would be the point if you didn't leave a legacy? I think probably the take on it would not be if you're leaving something in a better place, but whether you're leaving people in a better place, whether you're leaving, you've left something there that is sustainable even when you're not there. I think that's great. And if you've given people anything that they can go on and be better people to be, that's a great legacy. And usually those legacies you never know about, but you hope that they're there and you hope that they live on after you've disappeared.
Last one, Bex. If you were to go for dinner with any 3 leaders or 3 people in history, who would you go out for a meal and a glass of wine with?
Oh, well, one would be Michelle Obama. Read her book, watched her documentary, love her. I think she would be a great laugh to have a glass of wine with. Rita Pearson, she does. I don't think she's alive anymore. But hypothetically, I would love to sit with her and have a cup of tea and a chat about being a champion. If you haven't seen her TED talk, Every Kid Needs a Champion, it's well worth a watch. I'd love to sit down with her. And Jacinda Ardern. For me, following her at the moment, just loving her leadership, loving what she's doing and how she's led the country through this crisis with empathy and compassion. And I guess if I was going to stick a token guy in there, Michelle could bring her husband.
As a +1.
Just the +1.
I don't even get a seat at the table. What's going on?
You can make us a cup of tea, love. You make good Yorkshire tea. You can make the tea.
Alan will be waiting the table. Don't worry about that. We'll put the link for Rita Pearson's video that you talked about there.
Yeah,
when we share this on Twitter. Thanks very much. Thoroughly enjoyed that. An absolutely enlightening chat, and I'm sure for anybody going into leadership, it'd be useful, and especially for females. I think a lot of what you spoke about there, they can, females will be able to resonate with. But not only that, take a lot of courage from, and that's brilliant. And thank you very much for spending your time with us. Yeah,
thank you very much, guys. I think that what you're doing here is marvellous. It's just a great collaboration between leaders and learners. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
See you, Bex.
More in a moment.
Bye.